Chapter 16. I want you to return to East Africa. You can go back as marketing director. You will replace the sales director, Fear, who has gone to Australia. There's been some technicality. The Kenyan Minister of Agriculture fell on him like a ton of bricks and gave him 48 hours to leave the country. AAG was spelling out his directives in his usual unconvincing yet aggressive manner. But I've no interest in going back to Kenya. I've developed a new career here in marketing that's generating plenty of profits. My wife loves England. Our 3 children have settled in schools in Tring, and AAG interrupted. If you do not take this opportunity, I shall consider you have no further interest in your career. But I have bought a house in Little Gadsden, and our house in Tring is on the market. And Jeff Lancashire said, "Look, I am well aware of the activities of your products department, and so are our overseas subsidiaries and associates. And to really make a success in what you do, you have to have been a senior manager overseas. You cannot tell management what they should be doing if you've never been in their position yourself." Nor have you or ALM, I thought, and Peter Upton only had a short spell in the Middle East. Look, you'll do what I say. Wallace wants to leave Kenya, so you have every chance of becoming managing director next year. I crept my way back to Jane and the children. It was not a happy time for us. I was totally committed to Cooper's and had always believed that such loyalty would be rewarded accordingly. Having never wanted to move to another company, I had no plans I could bring into operation for such a crisis. If he means what he says, that for my career I have to go to a top management job overseas, Kenya is at least somewhere we know, better than Colombia or somewhere else in South America where we don't even speak the language. I know. I'll tell him I need to go to Kenya to see what the post-independence Cooper operation looks like. Better the devil we know. Jane's eyes stopped me from ruminating further. I had just had my 40th birthday, and I remembered years ago someone had said with conviction, perhaps it was my dad, "Remember, you'll get as far as you're going by the time you get to 40. The family was totally reliant on me to produce the funds to keep them. Jane wanted to stay in England, near to Ma and Sam, and she looked forward with pride to living in Little Gadsden, and putting her artistic talents to producing a lovely garden there. Our children, goodness knows what schooling will be there for them in Nairobi, I wondered. I need to see what it's like in Kenya these days. That can be arranged, said AAG without a moment's hesitation. In no time, I was flying the 4,000 miles to Nairobi. In Nairobi, the Cooper's MD, HOOU Wallace, was a veterinarian who had been the technical advisor during my previous time with Cooper's in Kenya. He had been excellent at that job, confident, full of good humour and resourceful. Later in Berkhamsted, to my surprise, I had heard of his visits to UK being a problem. As MD, he was loud-voiced, dogmatic, prepared to fall out with anyone from the Berkhamsted publican whose pub he was staying in, to any member of CTB. His behaviour had changed dramatically, and what he fears departure had not helped matters. I told the board and Berkhamsted he was not up to the job, and I was proved right, HOOU asserted. He now issued instructions loudly, and in no time a driver was taking me the 100 miles to Nakuru, where the company had a stand at the agricultural show. This would be useful because I could get a feel of the way the company was marketing its products and services. Only HOOU Wallace and the board and 1 or 2 top managers knew of my arrival in Kenya. The stand was staffed by Africans I had never met, so I wandered around as any European farmer or tourist might. From the moment I was near the stand, a Kikuyu member of the Cooper staff was engaging me in a presentation about the company's stand. He was a total enthusiast, and I warmed to his open approach. Discovering his name was Sami Kamau, I promised myself I would see he had a good job in the field among his tribe if I became marketing director. Back in Nairobi, I went round to see Johnny P. Patterson. He had recently been made manager of a Nairobi branch of the new AAG-led Cooper investment, Lee Brother and Blakeman, specializing in livestock feeds. It was an uncomfortable meeting. Johnny had obviously heard I might be returning to a job that Johnny, had hoped to get. Whereas here he was now in a small, uncomfortable shed of an office in a barn, surrounded by machinery and bags of livestock feed. I went to the offices Coopers had recently moved to, and saw with interest and surprise there were mini-skirted African secretaries and office staff who seemed to be doing a good job there. "I've got my eyes on a house for you," HOOU assured me, "and there's good schooling for your kids in Nairobi." So that was it. I flew back to UK to report to Jane that it seemed nothing much had changed in Kenya in 6 years, except for the better. My salary would rise quite well, and the company would pay half our school's school fees. While in Nairobi, I had taken an opportunity to look at schools, and it seemed to me there was an excellent school for the boys, Hillcrest. Hillcrest had plenty of sports facilities and seemed to be run on the lines of a good old-fashioned English prep school. With reluctance, I agreed with Peter Upton and ALM that I would go back to Nairobi. ALM asked for my recommendation as to who of my executives should be promoted to replace me. In the event, he thought he knew better and brought in an entomologist from outside products department. At this time, I happened to meet George Allen, my old office sharer. He was proud to show me how he was now senior in a new pricing office. The job of this office was to see that products, materials and services were priced to overseas units, so that the group retained maximum profits in the UK. I wondered what response such behaviour would get from such as my old friend as the MD of Australia. Coincidentally, George showed me a letter in which he was told by Australia that some material provided by the UK was now ridiculously expensive, and they would buy it henceforth from a supplier in the Far East. So, what's the benefit of the pricing office, I wondered, besides keeping George in a better-than-average job? Meantime, my Berkhamsted work continued. When I was next in Shell House, a senior manager called me into his office. There he told me he realized I was getting a bit frustrated at the slow progress being made in developing the use of Shell chemicals in our livestock markets. "I have to own up now," he said. "We plan to enter the livestock chemicals market ourselves, with our own products marketed under the Shell name. Oh, and I should inform you, we plan to use East Africa as our test market." "That's interesting," I replied. "I've just been posted to Nairobi, starting in November, so I'll meet you on the battlefield." He blinked, we smiled, shook hands, and after the normal courtesies I left his office. Just what I need, a new competitor, Shell. What will ALM have to say about this? He'll just think it's my problem now, but it'll surely be the group's problem globally. One day, a woman I had never met before got past Gloria and came into my office. She introduced herself as PA to AAG. She had presence and spoke confidently, so I believed her. "I have always wanted to live in Little Gaddesden," she started, and she went on to say that she had heard I had bought there just the sort of property she was looking for. She understood that I was soon to go back to East Africa, and she would be pleased to offer me 10% more than I had paid for Pedley. Jane and I had no interest in selling Pedley, I told the woman, and she soon departed. Some time later I worked it out. AAG was trying to loosen my ties to the UK, so that I would not want to return for many years. Keeping hold of Pedley was to prove to be one of the best financial decisions I ever made. House prices were to double in 3 years, and by 1980 were to have multiplied 4 times. I had just finished negotiating the purchase of a Vauxhall Victor estate. With embarrassment, I asked the salesman to release me from our oral contract. With good grace, he did so, wishing us the best for our future. Now there were the farewell parties. The first was supervised in the canteen by ALM, with well-practiced good humour. The second, Jane and I gave to my products department staff at our Tring house. The weather was excellent, and a good time was had by all in our garden there. The third, Rod Kelly advised us to throw a party at Pedley, to which he would, please, be invited, to show that we were well and truly in residence there. Come the day, Jenny and David Thallon, Anne and John Sykes, and other Tring friends, together with Rod Kelly, made a loud and cheerful party, inside and outside the bungalow. We were in residence. I arranged with the house agents, Brown and Merry, that once the alterations to Pedley were completed, they would start to see if they could find suitable tenants for us. At work, Peter Upton and ALM had to have their final says. "People are divided into builders and maintainers," said Peter Upton. "You are a builder. When you get to Nairobi, I want to see expansion. Too many of our overseas managers look at what they think will give them an easy time, take 15% off it, and put the result in as their budget. As a result, we are always under-resourcing from here. When you get to Nairobi, I want you to budget up," he said in his more explosive manner. "Yes, sir," I said. Always ahead mentally, ALM said quietly to me, "Ian, I want you to understand you have immediate access to me at any time. Any problem you think needs my help, let me know immediately and I will deal with it." "Thanks," I said, not fully appreciating that he foresaw and knew of some uncomfortable problems ahead of me.